When a child cries and no one responds, or when they achieve something and no one notices, the unspoken message is, I don't matter. Psychologists call this relational neglect, and the impact can last a lifetime. As adults, it can show up as a drive to constantly prove yourself, or an anxiety that people will leave if you're not useful, or even a struggle to believe you deserve love. Identity before awareness. Did you know your identity was already being formed before you could even speak? Before you ever said the words, I am, other people were saying things about you through their words, their tone, their actions, and even their silence. Now, I'm a dad with a toddler, and this truth has become really personal for me. I see every day how my child's identity is being shaped, sometimes by the things I say directly, but also by the things that I don't even notice I'm doing. And it hit me. Our identities were shaped the exact same way. So today, let's talk about how identity begins before awareness, the way it's shaped in early childhood, and what we can actually do about it as adults. Hey, I'm Dr. Lem Usita, and on this channel, we explore identity, how it's formed, how it influences leadership, and how we can live with clarity instead of confusion. Now, when I coach people or work with leaders, I often hear them describe struggles that actually trace back to their earliest years, things they don't even remember consciously, because identity doesn't wait until you're old enough to understand. It starts from the beginning. Now, here's the deal. Words were spoken over us. Even before we understood language, words shaped us. The late, great Abraham Joshua Heschel says, words create worlds. Neuroscience tells us that babies are sensitive to tone and emotional energy long before they even have vocabulary. So if you're constantly hearing you're difficult, or you're the really smart one, or why can't you be more like your siblings, those weren't just passing comments. They were forming a sense of who you were supposed to be. Think about it. A toddler doesn't sit there analyzing, they just absorb, they internalize. And those words start building these categories of, this is who I am, or this is who I must not be. Now, as a dad, when I look at my toddler and I say, you're kind, you're brave, I realize I'm not just describing them, I'm speaking identity into them. And the same was true for us growing up. The words spoken over us were forming a foundation, sometimes stable and sometimes shaky, but we're still standing on those foundations today. I had a student once years ago. She was told a bunch growing up that you're so sensitive and that you just cry all the time, and even up in her early 20s she believed it, and she lived the reality of that because that was the word spoken over her. Now let's talk about the power of being ignored. Identity isn't only formed by what's said, it's also shaped by silence. Being ignored can be just as powerful as being labeled. When a child cries and no one responds, or when they achieve something and no one notices, the unspoken message is, I don't matter. Psychologists call this relational neglect, and the impact can last a lifetime. As adults, it can show up as a drive to constantly prove yourself, or an anxiety that people will leave if you're not useful, or even a struggle to believe you deserve love. Some of us need that kind of approval. I think about my own toddler. If they run into the room excited to show me something they built, and I'm too distracted on my phone to notice, that's not just a missed moment, it's a message. It's an indirect shaping of identity, and it's often the most powerful kind. And some of you watching know exactly what this feels like. Not the wounds of being criticized, but the wounds of being unseen. Do you know what I'm talking about here? When you walk in and you just need that approval, or you just need to be seen, and for whatever reason, people chose not to see you. Now, there are family systems and roles that also impact identity. Another way identity forms early is through family systems. And you didn't choose your role, you just got stuck in it. You inherited it. You were born into this particular family, and this particular family had this particular family system. When you're the oldest, expected to be responsible, you set the example. Maybe you were the youngest, doted on, or dismissed. Maybe you were the middle child who became invisible, or the peacemaker in the household full of conflict. These roles often take shape before we're even old enough to recognize them. And they don't just disappear when we grow up. Many of us still act out these scripts. Maybe you're the caretaker, you're the overachiever, you're the fixer, or maybe you're the rebel. And then your siblings might choose, well, since my sibling was the rebel, I'm going to be the good, compliant one. That's how we first learn how to belong, by playing out these roles. Now, here's the thing. Those roles were strategies for survival in your family system, but survival strategies aren't always life strategies. What once kept you safe might be now holding you back. Now, let's talk about culture and community scripts. Beyond family, culture was also shaping you before you could name it. Maybe you grew up in a culture that said, boys don't cry, or girls must be nice, or failure is not an option in our family. These weren't lessons someone sat down to explain. They were absorbed from the environment, reinforced by stories, celebrations, or even punishments. You watch your parents model these behaviors for you. And because you absorb them so early, they feel like reality, not just perspective. You didn't learn them as one way of looking at the world. You learned them as this is the way that the world works. I see it in my toddler. Even at this age, they're already noticing patterns, who gets praise, what's valued, what's considered good. Culture shapes identity before awareness, and we carry those cultural imprints with us, even if we later question or resist them. Now, why does this matter? Here's the big realization. Much of who we think we are was formed before we even had a chance to choose it. Through words, through silence, through family roles, and through cultural scripts, we inherited an identity story that began way before we could write our own. But here's the hope. As adults, we now have the agency to revisit these stories, to ask which parts are true and which parts no longer serve me. What new story do I want to live into? Here's some practical steps. Name the narratives. Take time to reflect. What words are spoken over you? What silences shaped you? What roles did you play in your family? Write them down. Sometimes the act of naming them is the most powerful first step. Next, test the truth. Ask yourself, were these things actually true about me, or were they projections of someone else's pain, someone else's expectations, or maybe culture? Maybe you were told you were lazy when you were actually just creative in ways your family didn't value. Maybe you were just ignored, not because you didn't matter, but because your parents were overwhelmed with their own struggles. Then rewrite the script. Here's where agency comes in. As an adult, you get to rewrite. Replace those old labels with new, accurate ones. Speak words over yourself that are life giving. Surround yourself with people and communities that affirm who you're becoming, not who you were told you had to be. This is not about pretending the past didn't happen. It's about reclaiming authorship of your identity story. Now, our identities were being formed before we could speak, through words, roles, culture, and even silence. And while we didn't get to choose those early imprints, we do get to choose with how we live with them now. So here's my question for you. What's one message from your childhood, spoken or unspoken, that you've had to rewrite as an adult? Please drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. And if this conversation resonated, make sure to like, subscribe, and share for more content on identity and leadership. And remember, you're more than what was spoken or left unspoken over you. You are who you are becoming. And always remember, be unique, but belong. Thanks for checking it out.